"I'll pay you 1M to read this letter," the CEO mocked. Her response froze the room. The CEO held the letter between two fingers as if it were worthless paper, then laughed in front of the entire restaurant. "I'll pay you $1 million to read this letter," he mocked, expecting the young waitress to panic or embarrass herself. But instead, she slowly lifted her eyes, looked directly at him, and gave an answer so unexpected that every conversation in the room stopped. The man who had been laughing only seconds earlier suddenly went completely silent, because the letter in his hand was not a joke, and the woman, standing before him, knew something about his past that could change everything. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that someone's appearance or job should never determine their worth, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to Beyond Kindness. Sometimes, one small act of kindness can change a life in ways we never expect. Her name was Elena, a 26-year-old waitress who had learned very early that life did not always reward good people quickly. Every morning before sunrise, she took 2 buses across the city to reach the luxury restaurant where she worked. She wore the same green uniform every day, kept her hair neatly tied back, and carried a small, folded photograph of her late mother inside her wallet. Her mother had raised her alone and had always told her that dignity was not something given to you by money. It was something you carried inside yourself. After her mother died, Elena had promised herself that, no matter how difficult life became, she would never allow desperation to turn her cruel. That evening, the restaurant was filled with wealthy businessmen, executives, and influential guests attending a private dinner. At the center table sat Daniel Carter, a 38-year-old technology CEO whose company had recently become worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He was famous for being brilliant, ambitious, and brutally confident. He had arrived wearing an expensive cream-colored suit, surrounded by investors and senior executives who laughed at nearly everything he said. Elena had been assigned to serve his table, and from the moment she approached, she noticed the way he looked at her uniform before looking at her face. To him, she was simply another waitress, near the end of dinner. Daniel noticed a folded envelope sitting beside his plate. Elena had placed it there carefully after being instructed by the restaurant manager to deliver it personally. The envelope had no company logo, no return address, and only Daniel's name written across the front in handwriting that appeared old and slightly shaky. Daniel picked it up, turned it over, and frowned. Elena stood nearby, waiting. He asked whether she knew who had sent it, and she quietly explained that it had been delivered earlier that afternoon by an elderly man who specifically requested that Daniel receive it before midnight. Daniel laughed. He opened the envelope, pulled out the letter, and read the first few lines. His expression changed for only a second, but Elena noticed it. Then his confidence returned. He waved the letter in the air and asked if she wanted to read it. When she hesitated, he leaned back in his chair and made the offer that would soon silence the entire room. He told her that if she could read the letter aloud without crying or stumbling, he would give her $1 million. His friends burst into laughter. Several guests turned around to watch. Elena looked at the letter, then at Daniel, but she did not reach for it. Instead, she calmly asked him why he was willing to pay $1 million just to hear a stranger read a piece of paper. The laughter faded slightly. Daniel smiled and said that some people needed money to do almost anything. Elena looked down at the envelope and noticed something that made her heart stop. At the bottom of the page was a small handwritten sentence she recognized instantly. It was the same phrase her mother had used every night when Elena was a child. Never become so rich that you forget what poor people feel. Elena realized the letter was from Daniel's father, years earlier before Daniel became wealthy. His father had owned a small repair shop in a neighborhood where Elena's mother had worked. Her mother had cleaned the shop after hours while raising Elena. Daniel's father had once helped Elena's family when they could not afford medicine. He had paid for Elena's mother's treatment and had even offered to give her a permanent job. But after Daniel took over the family business and transformed it into a technology empire, those memories seemed to disappear. His father had become increasingly disappointed by the person Daniel was becoming. The letter explained everything. Daniel's father had been diagnosed with a serious illness months earlier, and before passing away, he had written one final letter to his son. He told Daniel that wealth was never supposed to be the measure of a man. He reminded him of the woman who had worked in his repair shop, the woman who had once refused to accept charity because she wanted to earn every dollar herself. He wrote that her daughter, Elena, was now working as a waitress because circumstances had taken away the opportunities she deserved. The final pages contained a request. If Daniel ever met Elena, he should help her without humiliating her, without making her feel small, and without expecting anything in return. Daniel stared at Elena as the truth slowly reached him. He suddenly remembered his father talking about that family years ago. He remembered his father saying that a little girl named Elena had once dreamed of becoming an architect. He remembered laughing at the idea because, at the time, he had believed dreams were luxuries reserved for people who could afford them. Elena finally took the letter from his hand. She did not read it aloud. She simply looked at Daniel and explained that she already knew what it said, because her mother had told her about his father. Many years ago, she then revealed the part that froze everyone in the restaurant. Her mother had kept a small envelope from Daniel's father for 20 years. Inside it was enough money to pay for Elena's education, but her mother had never used it. She had returned it because she believed her daughter should succeed through her own effort. The money had never been the point. The kindness had been. Daniel lowered his head. The room had become completely silent. The same people who had laughed at Elena moments earlier were now watching her with tears in their eyes. Daniel asked why she had never told anyone who her mother was. Elena simply explained that she had not come to the restaurant to prove anything. She had come to work. For the first time that evening, Daniel looked ashamed. He took out his checkbook and wrote a check for $1 million. Then he pushed it across the table toward Elena. But she did not take it. She told him that if he truly wanted to honor his father, he should use that money to create opportunities for people who had talent but no chance to prove it. She suggested scholarships for children from struggling families and paid training programs for workers who wanted better careers. Daniel stared at her for several seconds before tearing up the check. He then asked Elena to become the first director of the foundation he would create in his father's name. Elena refused at first, believing it was too much. But Daniel told her that his father had spent his life helping people quietly, and he wanted to spend the rest of his life learning how to do the same. Months later, Elena walked into a university auditorium, wearing a simple blue dress instead of her restaurant uniform. On the wall behind her was the name of the new foundation. Hundreds of students sat before her, many of them receiving scholarships that had once seemed impossible. Daniel sat quietly in the back row. He no longer cared about being the most important person in the room. He was simply grateful to be there. Elena never forgot the night when a CEO offered her $1 million as a joke. She remembered the laughter, the embarrassment, and the silence that followed. But more than anything, she remembered the lesson her mother had given her. Kindness is not measured by how much money you give. It is measured by whether you make another person feel worthy. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes people deserve second chances, and subscribe to Beyond Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach more people who may need a little hope today. Before we end, I want you to leave one special comment. Kindness is worth more than money. Write it below if you believe that a person's true value is never measured by their wealth, their job, or their status. Because sometimes, the person standing quietly in front of us is carrying a story worth more than $1 million. And sometimes, the greatest fortune a person can receive is not money at all. It is the chance to become a better human being.